I moved to Canada at the worst possible time. I was taking over an IT recruitment team and the walls just collapsed around me. It was pretty grim.
Well, Dualta, welcome to Recruiter Fuel. I appreciate you taking the time out of your schedule to actually have this video chat today.
Yeah, thanks very much for having me. I'm excited to get into the detail.
You were telling me about the wall behind you. I mean, that is a great backdrop for video. You got to use that thing more often.
Yeah, as you know, I run an audio podcast. So my project for the new year is to kind of get to grips with video. And luckily, I'm in this. I rent an office in this beautiful building, and this is just it's lovely, isn't it? They use it as an art gallery in the summer.
So there's two pieces I want you to kind of talk about a little bit. One, you're also a recruiter's recruiter because you have an agency that recruits recruiters, but then you also have your podcast. So tell us about both of those a little bit.
Where do I begin? My background is I've worked for a large UK organization, and I did that in Australia for a number of years.
Okay.
And then my wife and I moved to Canada, where we worked for a search firm for a little bit. And I moved to Canada at the worst possible time.
How so?
Well, it was 2015, and we moved to Calgary. And I'm not sure if you know much about the commodities prices of what happened there, but it was pretty grim. So I was taking over an IT recruitment team, and the walls just collapsed around me. So I kind of went from being in a big organization with lots of support, and the way those firms work is they really build you up and they kind of get your confidence going, and you just like it's all high activity, to a search firm in an economy that was collapsing. And I very much struggled for that year. And I got to a point where my wife and I decided that we would move to Guatemala and launch our own business remotely.
Really? What was going on in Guatemala?
Well, in between Australia and Canada, we went there and we worked online a little bit. And we liked the vibe of it. At the time, we had no kids, no responsibilities. And I knew that we could go there, set up, give it a crack for 6 months. And if it worked out, it would be great. And if it didn't, it wouldn't bankrupt us. So we rented a serviced office. One of our first placement was a Chinese recruiter into a UK-owned recruitment firm in China.
Okay.
And that there just taught us that, well, we could do this from anywhere in the world.
So it's interesting. My son just got back from 3 months in Guatemala, where he and his wife, they do digital online marketing and some other things. They have a friend that lives down there, so we had an opportunity to visit a few months ago. What an interesting country to operate in.
Yeah, and we were in Antigua, Guatemala.
That's where we were.
Yeah, so it's kind of like a Disney-fied version of Central America. Like it's the place where people go in between their hard travels.
Yeah.
And I just loved it. You know, I'd wake up in the morning, I'd open up our patio door, and the temperature's always perfect. And I would look, and there'd be a volcano to my left and to my right. And, you know, it was just an amazing time. And, you know, my life's full of responsibilities and all the rest now, and the business is a bit busier and that, but I often look back on it, you know, as a cherished time.
So did you go straight to the south part of England where you're at now, right after Guatemala?
No, we moved to Europe, to Brussels. I used to live there for a while as well, and we spent a bit of time in Brussels, and we got married, and then we drove from Brussels down to the south of Spain. And I was in the process of toying whether we wanted to really expand our search firm or try something new. And it was an interesting journey. But by the time we got to the south of Spain, my wife was pregnant, and she said, we have to move back to my village and I need to be closer to my mom. So here we are, 2 years later. So I've been here for 2 years now.
So we're going to come back to more of what you're doing, again, as a recruiter's recruiter, as I'm calling it. But you also have your podcast. Tell us more about the purpose of the podcast. What are you trying to do with it?
The purpose is evolving. As a recruiter, I believe that all the work that we do should be based around having an inbound traffic of candidates and clients coming to you so we can be consultative and use our time at the best way possible, as opposed to maybe the way that I was trained, and that was make 100 calls, keep at it, keep making calls. And the piece I could never figure out was how do you create content that is interesting, engaging, and thought-provoking, because it becomes a bit same after a while. And I just did a lot of research into marketeers like Gary Vee, and it seemed like a logical thing. Like I have such an interesting network of agency owners, independent recruiters, and sharing their story has been really liberating, and it's allowed me to learn lots.
Tell me a bit more about that, because that's one of the topics of discussion, is you talking about using content to drive brand candidates. Tell me more about your thoughts around that and how it differs from those of us. I've been in this business for 24 years now, right? When I did recruiting, kind of like your interview with Joe Mullings recently, right? Back in the day, it was mailing resumes. It was nothing but a phone and here in the States, yellow pages. But it's changing, and you just referenced that. Tell me more about that.